Hello and welcome to On Location Live. My name's John Gooden. Welcome to UFC Fight Island. We're on Yas Island, Abu Dhabi, and I'm very excited to be part of this fan experiences Q&A with the one and only Michael Chandler. I think he's logged in. I think we're about to hear from him very shortly. You guys may have been expecting Dan Hardy. I'm sorry for that. There were some scheduling mix-ups, but we need to get to the questions for Mr. Michael Chandler, top UFC lightweight, who's got a very big appointment coming up at UFC 257. Right. You guys need to be going into the question box, which I think is on the right or left of your screen. You can get your questions in. I know a bunch of you have already submitted them, and then we can ask Mr. Chandler himself. He'll be with us shortly so that we can get right to it and see how he's doing ahead of his big matchup against Dan Hooker, which will be going up next week. Right, let's see where they are. We're just still waiting on Michael. Here he is. Good evening, Michael. How are you doing?
What's up, John? I'm doing good, man. Touchdown in Abu Dhabi on Yas Island about 2:30 today, and trying to get adjusted to the time change and all that. So we are getting fight week going.
Well, welcome, first and foremost, or should I say welcome back? Because, of course, we did something similar last time you were on Fight Island, but that was a dry run. That wasn't for real as it transpired, but this time you're going in and we know that you've got a big fight coming up. So straight off the bat, how are those emotions as you touch down on the tarmac?
They're definitely different. Last camp, I had to put myself mentally in a zone like I was going to fight Justin Gaethje or like I was going to fight Khabib, and like I was going to make weight. And, of course, I did have to make weight, but the fight, as you said, never transpired. And I always knew there was somewhat of a slim chance that I was going to fight. And then especially by, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I knew that the percentage just kept dwindling, and you kind of keep you still keep your focus, keep your foot on the gas as if you're fighting. And then finally Saturday, I was able to take the pressure off and realize I was just going to take my competitor hat off, put my fan hat on, and just sit there cage side and watch Khabib and Justin Gaethje. So it was definitely a fruitful trip. Definitely had a good time, good dry run, good test run of my first UFC fight week here in Abu Dhabi a couple months ago. And now I get to do it all over again.
So give an idea of when you say dry run and you were testing things out, like a lot of people won't be able to put that pro athlete hat on, of course. You guys are in a very small percentages of us. So what were you looking for out of that experience? Obviously, there was maybe a fight there, but I'm sure there was a business side to this decision as well.
Yeah, there was a business decision to be made, but also there's the promotional side of things and the athletic side of things. So for me, I was coming over. I've been fighting outside the UFC for 11 years, my entire career. I just signed with the organization. That October opportunity to come here to be the backup gave me an opportunity to, as you said, you and I did a live Q&A. I did a lot of interviews. I rubbed elbows with all the staff here in the UFC. Everybody with the UFC landed around their neck. Everybody with a UFC shirt on. The pictures, the commentator interviews, the weight checks, the UFC fight kit checks, all the different 100 of things that you got to do on fight week. Everything is now bigger. Everything is now more detailed now that I'm with the UFC, because it's like no other promotion that I have ever experienced, either as an athlete, as a cornerman, as a coach, as a guy who was just a spectator. So, it was a good way to just test the waters, get a dry run of what a fight week in the UFC looks like, as well as just as an athlete, the weight cutting and the nutrition side of things, and getting my mind right and focus on fighting inside that UFC octagon eventually, whenever it would happen. And as fate would have it, now it is January 23rd. And here we are, a couple days, 7 days away, and couldn't be more excited.
I really can't imagine what it was like sort of mentally and emotionally going through all of that stuff in a maybe not type deal, but I'm sure the fans are gonna have questions around that. So, Michael, I'm going to go straight to the board, take a look at some of these questions. We'll get it in there early. Guys, who are watching this right now, as I said, I think is in the top right-hand corner. Ask a question, do so. And right now, I'm going to see what we've got. So first up, we have a question from Sergio. I hope I've pronounced that right. What is your ultimate morning routine?
That's a good question, and I think morning routines are extremely important because I think the way you start your day is going to have a dramatic impact on how your day proceeds and ultimately ends. First thing, wake up and pray. Thank God for another day, even if it's just that. Thank you, God, for another day. Wiggle my toes. I got two capable legs. Wiggle my fingers. I got two capable arms, and I'm able to go out and do great things. After that, I like to go get a nice big cup of coffee, drink it black with a little bit of MCT oil to like to get some fats in the morning for the brain, for the body, get things going. And then from there, I usually try to go to my office and do a little bit of light reading, light reading, something that's going to get my mind focused on the positive, focused on achievement and high performing, high functioning individual, becoming a high functioning individual, and then look at my list of things that I may have to do. Obviously during training camp is a lot different than outside of training camp. During training camp, I try to take all of those things off my plate. So I'm just focused on training, maybe a little bit of fight footage, recovery, visualization, training again, and then things like grocery shopping and that. But outside of training camp, when I, take my athlete hat off a little bit and put that business hat on a little bit, focus on the 5 or 6 things that I need to get done that day, and get the most, the one that I don't want to do the most, get that done first. It's called eating the frog. If you got a big list of things and you got to eat a frog, eat the frog first because it's the worst thing on the list. Get it done, get that done first, and then the rest of the stuff will seem easy. So that's kind of a glimpse into my morning routine.
I have never heard that phrase before. Eating the frog. I've never come across that.
Eat the frog, man. It's it's an old school. I think it's a old school Zig Ziglar thing. Zig Ziglar, one of the greatest professional speakers, motivational speakers of all time. He said, if you got a list of things to do and you got a frog, you got to eat a frog. Eat that frog first because everything else won't be as bad.
I love Zig Ziglar. I remember listening to some of his audio stuff last year. It was very motivating indeed. He's got a wonderful tone, very lovely. Why am I not surprised that you've got this incredible morning routine kind of all mapped out to set the day off right? I love that. Does that routine change when you're during fight week? Because the big cup of coffee, we're in these great rooms, Michael, but it's like more of an espresso machine. So you might be a little upset by that.
Yeah, they are very small, but I'm pretty good at just putting about five shots in there and then adding my own water. I figure it out. I mix and match. I'm here with my manager as well. He's a pretty good coffee mixologist as well. So we definitely, that's the one thing that we always call the front desk down. That whatever, whenever button where you can get the food or whatnot. It's like 96% of the time it's like, hey, can you bring more coffee pods? So
love that. I love that you're traveling with your own barista as well. I mean, now this is the sort of athlete that we have right here.
Got to. Exactly. I mean, Connor shows up to Fight Island on a yacht, but I brought my own barista. Okay.
Hey,
we're 2 peas in a pod.
I think I know which one's more cool, if I'm honest.
Exactly.
Right, let's see what else we've got for you. This one is from Harry. Thank you very much, Harry. Dream matchup between you and someone who is now retired. Oh, we're going in with some toughies early.
Yeah, well, is Khabib retired technically?
We're not sure. He's going to be impressed.
Yeah, exactly. We won't use him because he's technically not retired. Shoot, someone who is, he said now retired, not retired, right?
Yeah.
Someone who
is retired, yeah.
I would have to go with George St. Pierre, or is I would have to go with George St. Pierre. He's one of the greatest to ever do it. He was an absolute animal in his prime. He and I match up kind of pretty well as well because he wasn't a wrestler, but he used wrestling a lot, and he was very effective with his wrestling. One of the best MMA wrestlers in the game, and he was always exciting and he was always a champion inside the octagon, outside the octagon, champion mindset, and he was just an awesome, humble ambassador of the sport. Those are the kind of guys that I love to see in this sport. Those are the kind of guys that we need more of in the sport. So I would love to compete against him.
I take it he did influence you, but is there anything specific that you took from George, be it maybe his style or, as you refer to, something that he did outside as a champion?
Yeah, I think what George did really well, yes, aside from most impressively was the way that he carried himself. He put his whole country on his back. Everyone in Canada looked at him, as a mixed martial arts, a professional athlete savant, and he carried that Canadian flag proudly. And that would be something that I would want to emulate, obviously, for the United States as an American fighter. But I think what he did also so well from a technical standpoint was there was always critics of saying, George St. Pierre takes guys down too much, because the average MMA fan wants to see you go out there and stand and bang and sprawl and brawl, and they want to see stitches and blood and all that. And of course, we all want that. We all want to be entertained. But one of the greatest things that George St. Pierre did is he never, ever wavered from the game plan. He was very honest and intelligent with what was going to be the easiest and most effective path to victory for him, with his physical attributes, his style, his strengths, and his weaknesses. And he mixed it up just about better than anybody else in the UFC history has. Because he was able to get the takedown, he didn't just use the takedown. He also was constantly mixing up the strikes. He had a ton of submissions. And he was also just such a dominant wrestler and so explosive. So I just love that he always stayed in his lane. He stayed with the vision that he had for himself, and he never wavered from it. And that is what a championship mindset looks like.
Very good. Lovely stuff. All right, let's see. We got lots of questions to get to here. This one is from Robert. So Robert asks, who would you like to fight next if you beat Dan Hooker? Robert, you got to say when. We got to get in the when you beat Dan. We're on with Michael now. So when you beat Dan Hooker, who would you like to fight after?
So when I beat Dan Hooker, there's just such a – I will say, as mixed martial artists, we have to brace uncertainty all the time. You got to embrace the uncertainty because you have no idea. And I think that's one of the great things about the UFC lightweight division right now. It's the most energized, most electrifying, and most hyped up division in the UFC right now because of Khabib leaving, because the name of Conor McGregor, Conor fighting Poirier, Oliveira looking stellar a couple weeks ago. You got myself and Dan Hooker fighting now. Honestly, I would always say whoever the number one guy is, anytime I get asked that question, the answer to that question is I want to fight the number one guy in the world, because that is the most amount of eyeballs. That's the opportunity to win a world championship. And that's ultimately the way that I prove that I'm the best lightweight in the world. Anything other than that is just a stepping stone to get there. So, of course, I had to come into the UFC. I had to show that I possess the skills necessary to become UFC lightweight champion. So I essentially was offered everybody inside the top 5. Dan Hooker was the one guy who said yes, and now I get to compete against him on January 23rd, and I will beat him. When I do beat him, it's going to be very interesting because I am going to be tied now so closely with Conor and Poirier. My performance is going to be tied directly with Conor and Poirier. So if none of us are quote unquote spectacular enough, like Khabib said, in order to entice him to come out of retirement, there's going to be a strong case to be made that the 2 fights on this card could easily end up fighting each other for that UFC title. It could be Conor, it could be Poirier. So in a roundabout way, Khabib would be my number one choice because he's the number one guy in the world. That's how you prove you're the best in the world. Number 2 is Conor McGregor because that's the biggest platform, the most eyeballs, and probably the most financial incentive. And then Poirier would be a close number 3 because I truly think that Poirier is the most well-rounded individual in the entire not just in the entire division, but in the entire sport. When you talk about being a fighter, a father, and a husband, what he does from a charitable standpoint, I would love to compete against that guy as well.
Yeah. Oh, well put. I like that. When you got fixed up with Dan Hooker, was it kind of nice to have that clarity rather than all the questions that we had for you when you first came to Fight Island. It was kind of like fantasy matchmaking, right? Okay, you were here as a stand-in, but everyone was asking who's it going to be in it. There's a whole run, it's a murderer's row in the top 10, top 15 of the lightweight division. So was it quite nice to quieten your mind down to just this one individual?
It was finally, I think the whole process of me signing with the UFC has been, seems longer than it actually is. I just signed in the middle of September, so now it's the middle of January. So we're going on 4 or 5 months now. But it seems like it's much, much longer than that because of all the different headlines and all the different things. And I mean, it looked like I was fighting Ferguson. It looked like I was fighting Gaethje. It looked like I was fighting, and then Poirier's name was in the mix, and then they threw Oliveira's name in the mix, and Hooker's name has always been in the mix, but it wasn't. He was the lowest ranked of all those guys, I guess. So his name didn't always hit the headlines, but Dan Hooker was always a guy that we had our eye on, knowing that A, he's a tough guy, B, he's a great test, and C, he's a tough guy who will most likely say yes. And he was the guy that did say yes when everybody else kind of said no. So it felt so good to get the actual ink on paper, get the bout agreement signed, get the contract signed, get the flights booked, because we had our eye on this January 23rd card, for a while now, but so many different outside circumstances. If the UFC fans knew the behind the scenes negotiations and just trying to put these fights together, I do not envy Dana White, Sean Shelby, Mick Maynard, Hunter Campbell. I do not envy these guys because they are dealing with the biggest mixed martial arts platform on the entire planet by far, with a huge roster and a bunch of different guys trying to make fights. And I got to see the first glimpse of that. And I think with a dominant victory over Dan Hooker, it's going to be pretty undeniable that I'm going to get it's going to be a lot easier for someone to say yes to me, because I think originally nobody wanted to be the first guy to fight Michael Chandler, the guy who kind of came from outside the organization.
Right. Okay. I'm going to try and find some other questions here so that we get to know a little bit more about you from outside of just your athletic pursuits. So I'm walking down here. I've got one from Matt, actually. It says, favorite thing to do outside of fighting.
My favorite thing to do outside of fighting is, I live two completely separate lives. I'm either like all in or I'm all out. As you guys see, when you follow fighters' lifestyles, I mean, when I'm in training camp, I literally do nothing. I go, the highlight of my day is going to get groceries from the grocery store, or maybe my car needs gas and I get to go to a gas station. Other than that, it's hanging out at the house, going to train, visualizing, watching fight footage, doing whatever. So when I'm done with a fight, like I will be here in a week or so, my wife has 4 trips planned for us in the 6 weeks following my fight. And I just love, my favorite thing on earth to do is to travel with her. Her favorite thing to do is to travel. So we're going on a couple different trips. Just even if they don't have to be spectacular destinations either, just being somewhere other than our hometown of Nashville, Tennessee, or, back in Missouri if we're just visiting family. Because I'm on the road often. I train down in Florida. I'm on the road for different media obligations and whatnot. So it's almost like a waste every time I go and I'm not with her. We're not able to kind of vacation, if you will. So I'm excited to take some trips with my favorite person on earth. That is my hobby in between training camps. Go vacation with my wife. John, I believe we've lost a little bit of service. Well, boys and girls, I think we lost John a little bit. Oh, well, hey, Matthew says, who is my all-time favorite fighter? Any martial art. So as far as my all-time favorite fighter, I have to go with Dominic Cruz. Completely different style than anybody else in the entire world. I got to spend a lot of time with him down in San Diego, trained with him for a couple of years. His mindset, his ability to break down fights, his fight IQ, both as an analyst as well as a fighter, and he was always in exciting fights. So favorite fighter of all time is Dominic Cruz. John, do we have you back?
Yeah, you don't need me. I mean, I'm just
No, man.
picking up half the screen. That's pretty much
No,
it.
Travis hooked it up in the back. Shout out to Travis, everybody on the live stream, because he got it set up. I was like, I think we lost John, and boom, a question popped up, and I was like, oh well, I guess I'll run with this. So it worked out.
Team effort.
Uh-huh.
What else for you here? Right, we have a question here. I'm going to completely get this name wrong. I'm sorry. I think it's Anirudh. I apologize if that's the incorrect pronunciation. Did you decide on a walkout song?
I did. So the greatest rapper on earth today, his name is NF. The letter N, the letter F. That's my personal opinion. This is not that's my personal opinion, but I listen to NF every single day. And my walkout song is a mixture of Paid My Dues. It's the intro to Paid My Dues, and then it transitions into The Search by the rapper NF.
Love that. So I know the answer to the question is like, obviously the walkout's important to you, but how much time do you spend thinking about the walkout, and perhaps why is the walkout important to you?
Well, this one's special. This one's different. Because this is my first UFC walkout. The good thing is I think I've cornered 5 or 6 guys in the past. So I've made the UFC walk a couple times, but I just wasn't the guy walking, or I wasn't the guy in the front, but I've made the UFC walk. I've looked up, I've seen the fans. The UFC is set up different than any other. Obviously each organization is set up differently, but so the UFC has a certain look, they have a certain feel. So I've made the walk a couple times. Now I've made the walk in my head, visualizing it when I actually look down and I see my UFC gloves. I look down and I see my UFC fight kit, or walking into the Etihad Arena. And, a lot of times I see a ton of fans, but I know there's not going to be a ton of fans there. So the walkout is important because that's what sets the tone. But the biggest thing for me is not getting too high on the walkout. You see a lot of guys just getting amped up and jacked up and jumping up and down, and they kind of have that adrenaline dump. So I try to just stay pretty even keel and take in the moment that is the walkout in the UFC. So I'm excited about it.
The one thing that you obviously didn't do first time around, everything up to it, was actually step into that octagon and hear the horn go and the referee say, right, let's do this. Are you at all have you been thinking about that moment? Because octagon jitters, as a commentator, it's something that we throw out there, and I speak with a lot of fighters. Yes, it's a thing. Other people know it's not so much of a thing. But do you have any idea if it will be a thing for you?
I don't think you're really going to know until you get there. But the best way, I think the past is a lot of times the best predictor of the future. I've stepped into a cage to fight 26 times. I've stepped into big title fights with a lot of things on the line, a lot of eyeballs on me. Not as big as this, but the best thing you can do is ignorance is bliss. Embrace the fact that ignorance is bliss. Honestly, I'm going to try to think about I'm not gonna think about how many people are watching. I'm not gonna think about the fact that it's now the UFC octagon instead of a cage that I was fighting in previously. Because really, at the end of it all, it's a specific rule set with minimal equipment, and that cage door closes, and you look across the octagon, and there's a guy standing in front of you with 2 arms and 2 legs, just like I've done 26 times, and just like I did 200 something times in the sport of wrestling before I started fighting. So the goal is to not let it affect me too much, but I have visualized it. I have visualized, what the octagon looks like. I have visualized what the canvas looked like. I have visualized Bruce Buffer being in there. I have visualized with my ears inside my mind what Bruce Buffer is going to sound like. Is he going to walk over to me? Or are we going to fist bump? You got to put yourself inside that octagon before you actually get there. And visualization, I think, is still one of the most underrated aspects of anybody attaining success in any industry in life.
No, I like it. One thing I need to ask you is, when you make that walkout, who are the gentlemen that are going to be having your back?
So I will have my striking coach and head coach Henry Hooft. I will have my wrestling and MMA coach Kami Barzini, and my training partner and good friend Marquez Jackson.
Very cool. That's a very strong lineup right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, I'm going to go back to the questions and see if we have anything else. Let's get this one up from Andrew. It said, what are your predictions for the main event on Saturday?
So this main event is very tough to call. You know, I've gone back and forth. I've waffled back and forth on it because it's so tough to call, because I think there is two very likely outcomes, but two very different outcomes. I think when you talk about Conor McGregor, you talk about his precision and his power and his ability to bring all the pressures of fight week that have been weighing on his opponent to make his opponent gun shy and think as if the moment is just too big. And that's why you see Conor get a lot of first round finishes, a lot of second round, first or second round finishes, because that pressure just wears on people. So if Dustin, who is a consummate professional, he's a champion in his own right, if he can handle those first 2 rounds, I think we're going to see Dustin start putting the pressure on in rounds later round 2, round 3, round 4, and round 5, and Dustin would come out with a unanimous decision. But you cannot neglect the fact that Conor could starch anybody in those first couple minutes of a fight. So we're either going to see a quick knockout by Conor, or I think them settling into a very tough fight and Poirier getting the better of those exchanges.
Nice. Right. I have a couple more for you. Luke asks, how excited are you to fight in front of fans on Saturday? Because I'm guessing that's all you're used to, right? You haven't had to go through this process of a closed arena.
I have. My last fight in August was. So,
of course, yeah. So what am I talking about? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I actually enjoyed it. It kind of brought me back to my wrestling days. Wrestling is a sport that is, doesn't get a ton of fans. So we were in some, small gymnasium somewhere, and just a couple people in the stands, or my mom and dad yelling. That's about it. That's all just about all you could hear. And so I enjoyed it. But, fighting in front of fans is what we love to do. We love to experience it with everybody there. So as much as I enjoyed having no fans, it's going to be great to have a couple thousand fans there at Etihad Arena on a huge night on a Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier pay-per-view card on Yas Island. I mean, it's you couldn't have scripted my UFC debut to go any better. And I just feel humbled at the opportunity, and to be able to share it with fans. My UFC debut with even though it is a limited number of fans, to be able to share my UFC debut with fans at all is definitely ideal. So hopefully I get to meet a bunch of them and shake some hands, take some pictures, sign some autographs. I don't know what the protocols are going to be. Actually, I think there's plexiglass and all kinds of stuff, so it's all set up.
Wave.
We got fans.
We got blow kisses.
Yeah, exactly. We got fans, but everything's still got protocols. So who knows, man? I love the fans. I love interacting with the fans on social media. So I'm excited about it.
One thing you've got to be aware of when you step into that arena, it smells brand new. Like the new carpet smell. It's so new when you walk in. You can take all of that in, and then walking through it it's a beautiful building, and of course that's with the big lighting rig that the UFC have as well, with the octagon in the middle. It just looks. I'm very excited for you to obviously experience it firsthand.
Yeah, me too. Is it a brand new arena?
It is. Yeah, I think we're the first ones.
I saw the seats. They're like airline seats. They're like, right?
We're in the Middle East, right? We're in Abu Dhabi. Yeah. They don't do anything by hand. Look at our rooms that they put us in. It's like, this is better than my home.
Yeah, I know, exactly. So it's well, that's cool. Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, hopefully I get to go over there and at least see the arena before fight night. So
yeah. I don't know. Maybe you guys have like a press conference or something similar. So maybe you'll get to check it out before. What else we have here? Tiernan asks, what is your favorite MMA fight of all time that you've seen? Tough one.
It is a tough one, but I actually made it a point to remember this because I get asked that all the time, and I remember giving an answer last time, and I was like, that wasn't true. My favorite fight, actually, of all time is T.J. Dillashaw versus Renan Barão, number one. The fact that
Okay.
the fact that Renan Barão,
Was the
I think
guy.
I think he was undefeated at that point, or maybe he had one loss, but he just looked unbeatable. He was
Yeah.
top 3 on the pound for pound list. He just looked unbeatable. And then what TJ Dillashaw did going into there, and just putting on an incredibly masterful striking performance was really cool. And I think every young fighter should kind of watch that, because eventually you're going to become, outsider to contender to the guy who's going to be fighting for the title, and chances are you're going to be fighting a guy or a gal who a lot of people say is unbeatable. What TJ Dillashaw did that night was great. Went out there and it was a lot of fun to watch.
I forget about that when people ask me the same question, but that was great. He was, massive underdog going into that one, but the footwork that he used, the angles that he cut, it was, that was a good one. I like that answer. I like that
Very
one. Good. What else have we got here? Sam asks, would you ever change weight divisions?
I wouldn't, because I think I'm just a natural lightweight. I'm way too big to go 145, and I think my frame just isn't tall enough to fight at 170. You've seen guys bouncing around. You've seen Conor fight at 170, but really he's always just fought a lightweight at 170. So really, you're not really fighting, welterweights. I would love to fight guys from the 155 division at 170. If it's not for a title. I know Dana has kind of shot that down a couple times, but man, the weight cutting deal is no good. It takes all the fun out of fighting. It takes a toll on your body. It's probably taking a toll on your performance. If we could get rid of weight cutting, that would be a lot of fun. So I would love to fight certain guys at 170, but as far as going down a weight class, that could never happen. Just physically could not happen. So yeah, that's my kind of take on it. I would definitely fight 170. It just got to be the right guy.
Okay. I've got to ask you about Dan Hooker, because we've had a lot of questions here, but I'm interested. I'm going to be doing some work around the event as well. So this is my opportunity to shoot my shot. He's a very unique opponent in terms of his physical size and the tools that he has. What is your assessment of him?
He's a very complete fighter. Dan Hooker, he's tough. He has the ability to take damage and also dish it out. Obviously, yeah, you alluded to his physical attributes. He's 6 foot tall. He's long. He's rangy. He's great from distance, but he's also great in the clinch, and he's great close. I mean, there's not a ton of deficiencies that you can really pick out whenever you talk about Dan Hooker's game. Anytime that he's lost, obviously he got caught to the body a couple times by Edson Barboza. And then he's lost a couple close decisions. So I just need to go out there, keep my foot on the gas, keep the pressure on him, keep him on his back foot. Obviously, there's no secret. Everybody, all the fans keep giving me all their unsolicited advice. Watch out for the knees. It's like, and I get it and I appreciate it. But, being a wrestler, being a guy who came from the sport of wrestling, I knew people were going to be winging knees at my head every single fight, and I've dodged a bunch of them. I've eaten a couple of them, but Dan Hooker is a specialist with his knees. So definitely got to watch out for those. Touch his legs, hit his head, touch his head, hit his body, and look for takedowns when they're there. Look for a little bit of ground fighting if it's there, and then also be prepared to fight on the feet and look for a finish as quickly as I possibly can.
This is a 3-round fight compared to obviously 25 minutes. How does that affect your approach?
I love 3-round fights. I've fought my fair share of 5-round fights. I've been in a lot of 5-round fights, championship fights, 5-round wars. 15 minutes is much better than fighting 25, because I'm a fast starter. I can keep my foot on the gas for 15 minutes. I can keep my foot on the gas for 25 minutes if need be. But I can usually get enough done in 15 minutes to finish somebody. So that's the goal on Saturday night. Keep a foot on the gas. The preparation when it comes to training for a 3-round fight and compared to a 5-round fight is pretty much the same. Maybe you put in 1 extra round of sparring, 2 extra rounds of sparring if you're fighting a 5-round fight. But for the most part, I train like I'm fighting 25 minutes at all times anyway. So I want to be over prepared if anything, and keep my foot on the gas and keep Dan Hooker on his heels, and put the pressure on him early, make him feel the power early, and for 15 minutes be hunting for a finish.
This is one heck of a fight. There's going to be a lot in those 15 minutes if it lasts that long. Very exciting indeed. I've got just a couple more for you now. Thank you so much, Michael, for your time. This one's from Trevor. What do you think is the most important style of fighting?
I will always be biased towards wrestling. So obviously I was a wrestler in high school, wrestled in college. I know this live stream is mainly tailored towards the UK, Ireland, England. So obviously wrestling as a whole is getting better over in Europe. And there's some kind of standout coaches over there. I would say focus as much as you possibly can on your wrestling. Get around good wrestlers. Pull in wrestlers from the US, pull in wrestlers from Russia, bring them in for clinics. Bring them in for seminars, learn wrestling as much as you possibly can, because through the sport of wrestling, you not only learn just how to pick a guy up and put him down and focus on dominant position and hip position and body awareness and explosiveness and strength and being strong in areas where a lot of people are not strong, but you learn the stick-to-itiveness of how hard wrestling is. Wrestling isn't the most popular sport in the United States because it's the hardest sport. It's the most challenging sport. It's the most challenging mentally, physically, and spiritually. So throw yourself into the fire so that you can be galvanized and come out a better, happier, healthier, harder to kill person on the other side. And the best way to do that is through, in my opinion, the sport of wrestling, if you can be involved in it, or your wrestling practices, wrestling clubs.
There you go. Some good advice there. Before I let you go, I think I'm going to get a good answer here, so I'm going to throw this one in as well. It's just turned 2021. What were the resolutions of Michael Chandler?
2021, obviously I knew I wasn't going to fight in the UFC in 2020. So 2021 was the resolution was give myself permission to take all of the blessings in stride and do as much as I possibly can with them, because each year that goes by, I always think about that last fight that I will have eventually, where I take my gloves off for the last time in some arena somewhere, and I have to get done showering, get ready to go to my last press conference, and I'll look in the mirror and I got to ask myself, honestly, Michael, did you do everything that you possibly did with the gifts that God gave you? And I just hope that I can answer truthfully and without regret. So be ready with open arms to take in stride every single one of the blessings that are coming in 2021, because there will be a lot of them, especially after how rough 2020 was. And the second one was to live with more gratitude. I think we were kind of sucked. The gratitude was easily sucked out of us at times in 2020, because we just had so many things to think negatively about, so many things to be disappointed in, so many lockdown feelings, so many feelings of lack, feelings of ceilings, feelings of being cooped up, feelings of being trapped, that 2021, as things start to open up, even before they open up, live with more gratitude. And as I said before, travel with my wife. Now that 2020 is over, 2021, hopefully things open up a little bit, go on some trips with my wife.
Love it. Michael, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I love listening to you talk about the fight game and more. So thank you for that. Thank you very much to all the fans that provided the questions for this as well. And you can catch Michael's fights on BT Sport Box Office. It is, of course, UFC 257, Poirier versus McGregor 2. It is a big one. We thank you all very much for watching this. And once again, Michael, thank you so much. Best of skill this week.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you guys. See you at the top.